Hi, welcome to Lost in Composition. My name's Paul. I'm with hyperrealism artist Chris Klein today in Montreal in his studio.
Hello.
Hello. Thanks for doing this, and
That's
thanks
okay.
for the use of your studio.
No, you're welcome.
Yeah. So I've been a fan of your work for a long time, and I've been watching your costume paintings really take off, and they're making significant ripples in the art world. And you've been featured in Hyperrealism magazine several times, and you've had some of the most famous designers on the planet reach out to you. How does that feel?
It sounds more flattering than I feel it really is, but I feel very honoured, and I'm amazed really that they have taken off the way they have. Some designers, not many, I'd like more, but doors are opening for me all the time, so
yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen next, which is really exciting.
That's always nice, yeah. I know prior to this, you said that you had wished people would focus more on the art than the artist.
I did say that, didn't I?
Yeah, you did.
I guess partly because I'm a shy guy. You know, I'd like people to look at a painting and think, wow, that's a nice painting, I'd like that. But I know people like to know about the artist behind the work. I do as well. I'm as bad as everybody else.
Yeah.
So, people have seen me talk in galleries, and at least twice the gallery owner said they've bought that painting because they've seen me talking.
Oh, that's cool.
And they've got to know me a little.
Oh, good deal.
So I can't deny everyone wants to know a little bit about the artist.
Yeah, they do. I know as a collector, I've always wanted to know.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah.
You know. So you recently made a trip to London where you were welcomed into Zandra Rhodes' famous rainbow Penthouse.
Yes.
And I know you were relaxing with her there for a bit, but were you also talking about business?
It was just for relaxation.
Okay.
Really. But I wasn't expecting her to invite me over for tea. I just happened to say I'm in London, and she said come by and visit. So it was the first time she met my wife as well. It was just a friendly visit.
Oh, that's nice.
And she's got a table, a big circular table where she entertains people. And in the centre of the table is a big collection of stones from all places around the world. People give them to her, and she brings them back from different adventures.
Oh, nice.
And I promised years ago I'd bring a rock from Montreal or Quebec. And there's nothing gorgeous about the stones I've ever found anywhere. So I took one from my garden, a nice smooth round one, and I did a little painting on it, inspired by one of her costume designs. I thought that made it a bit more interesting, so I just bought that with me to give to her as a gift. But no, she was chatting for ages, and then she thought, I'll give you some of my samples. And I never asked her for anything.
Nice.
She's such a lovely lady.
Nice. That's really cool.
And she's coming to Montreal as well.
Oh, she is?
And she said maybe we'll be able to meet up again, and she might even come round and we'll do a nice meal.
That'd be nice.
She's wonderful.
That's
she's
really
such
cool.
a down-to-earth person.
Yeah, so how did your paths cross? How did you...
Quite a few years ago now, I can't think when, I was honoured to be able to photograph the archive collection at the V&A, the Victoria and Albert Museum in London, where they've got some spectacular costumes. So I went to one of their archive places. I'm trying to think of the name of the house now. It's a beautiful old house in London, vast. And one of the pieces they had on show was Zandra Rhodes. So I took photos of that among many other things. And I think it's the first piece I painted from the V&A collection. So it was a cropped piece, just showing the design of the fabric. It wasn't showing that it was a dress at all, a bit more abstract.
Okay.
And I normally would like designers to be happy with what I do, but it was the V&A owned it, so they said I can do this.
Yeah.
But I had to send it to Zandra to make sure that she was still okay with it. I didn't expect her to write back to me directly, but she did email me and said, "This is gorgeous. I've captured what she wanted to show in her work." And she invited me to a studio in London the next time I'm over.
Oh, very cool.
So that surprised me. It came out of the blue. It's just, she was such a nice, lovely lady. I was over in a few months' time, and I went to her studio, and she just left me there for the whole weekend. She made me eat coffees and teas and made me soup and ice cream she gave me. She was lovely. So
nice.
we got to know each other a little bit, and I came back with hundreds of photos. One of them was Freddie Mercury's shirt, the original piece he tried on when he was wondering what to wear for his tours, and she designed it as a wedding top, and he just put it on and moved around, and he said, "Yes, this is it." So I took photographs of that. I did a painting of it, and
cool.
That was fabulous. Great weekend. So
cool. So, where did you grow up?
I grew up just outside of London, North London, in one of the suburbs, a town called Boreham Wood. People often call it Elstree because Elstree is the old town, but famous for the film studios. Film and TV studios are there.
And you had mentioned the Muppets.
The Muppets were made in Boreham Wood. Yeah, the
They're
Muppet Show. Jim Henson, I don't think he could get any American studio to put up the money for it. So we went to England and made the Muppets there.
Okay, I did not know that. That's cool. I actually, in Seattle a few years ago, a museum there, the Museum of Pop Art, had a Jim Henson display. I don't know if it's come to Montreal.
There was a touring show, and I think it went to Ottawa.
Okay.
Maybe Toronto.
Yeah.
But sadly I never saw it. I'd love to have seen it.
Yeah, if you ever get the chance to. Would you paint any of the Muppets costumes?
Wouldn't say no.
There you go.
You never know.
Yeah, there you go. So was art part of your life growing up?
Yes. My life didn't revolve around art, but deep down I was always an artist. I was drawing as far back as I can remember, and all my family were artists. So my brothers and my sister gave me tips. I remember from when I was 5, 6 years old, I was not very good at drawing, but they were showing me how to do this or how to do that. I remember my sister saying, "This is how you do a tree." So I grew up with arts.
Are they still in the arts?
They've all had jobs, almost all of them. I had 4 brothers and a sister. 3 brothers and a sister. But they went into different fields, so it was drawing but more technical.
Okay.
My one brother and sister were cartographers, map drawing. Some of it was freehand, but much more technical. Another brother's a draftsman.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And your sister bought you paints?
I think I was 14 when she bought me a set of oil paints.
And that's what really started you on painting?
Yes. And she was doing some oil painting then. And I thought, wow, she's fantastic.
Cool.
But I started to paint in oils. It was difficult to transition from black and white drawing. But yeah, that got me going.
And so who were some of the most influential artists as you grew up and came of age on you?
Many years ago, I wouldn't have said I was influenced by any artists. But I do feel now more and more that I was influenced by certain artists, and you can see it in my costume paintings. I really focus on light and shadow, often black backgrounds, very strong shadows. So I know when I was very young, I used to stand in awe in front of paintings from Caravaggio, Joseph Wright of Derby. There's a few others, but these names I've always admired, and I still do. And some of their most famous paintings are in the National Gallery in London. And again, I was there last month, standing in front of those very same paintings.
Nice.
Just gazing at them. Yeah.
Yeah, I love getting lost in composition. But
Yeah.
that's hence the name.
Yeah.
But
So
anyways.
I can't help saying, yeah, they were an influence on me.
Okay.
There's no doubt now.
Very cool. So, do you have any formal training in the arts?
No
Mhm.
formal training.
Do you think that ever impacted your career?
I don't think it did.
Mm-hmm.
Some friends tell me that a lot of galleries are quite snob in their attitudes.
Yes.
And they expect an artist to have formal training.
Mm-hmm.
I've been fortunate that it didn't affect anything that's happened in my career.
No, I think
so-
you've mastered it. So,
Yeah. Many realist and hyperrealist artists seem to be self-taught, which is
Yeah.
interesting.
that is interesting.
But I like finding my own way.
Mm-hmm.
Though sometimes I now think I could have speeded up the process if I did have some formal training or learnt certain techniques, but to have learnt them myself is still good. I
Oh
have to
yeah.
experiment.
Yeah. I have deep respect for anyone who can go forth and do on their own.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I love your work. So.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now, in 1983, your work was accepted into the Royal Academy of the Arts in London for their summer exhibition. Can you tell us about that?
It's just something that the Royal Academy is very famous all around the world for the
Mhm.
summer exhibition. Many artists try applying. I think I just got lucky. Maybe each they look for particular subjects, not always. I didn't know what they were looking for that year, and I still don't. I think I may have got lucky with the subject.
Yeah.
It was a very small painting. When I've looked at the image of it now, somebody bought it straight away after that show, but I think that wasn't a particularly good painting of mine. It was a scene from Greece,
Uh-huh.
a little landscape.
Okay.
But I was just lucky enough to get accepted
Uh-huh.
for one painting, and it's only about this big.
Uh-huh. Was
But it was still a big honour, you know, and
Oh,
it
yeah.
still is.
Yeah,
Some
yeah.
famous artists
Yeah.
love to get into the summer show. So, yeah, it's something I like to boast about, because there's a strict judging panel and thousands of paintings are rejected each year.
Yeah.
So
that's a
Yeah.
very good honor. So, do you think that was a turning point in your career?
I'd like to say it was, but perhaps not. It's something I could always boast about. I used to have occasional shows when I was in England, but
Uh-huh.
not in galleries, or some smaller galleries.
Mm-hmm.
But it helped with the publicity a little bit.
Okay.
But I was still a hobby painter for many years after that,
Mhm. selling
the occasional painting, maybe only 2 or 3 a year. But
What would you say your biggest break was?
I think I'll have to say the costume paintings. You know, I've been living in Canada for 22 years now, 23 years I think.
Mhm.
I've had work in galleries. I did some abstract paintings. I
Mhm.
sold a few in quite a large gallery in Montreal.
Mhm.
Everything like that gave me a boost,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
not enough to live on. I was still working in theatre and in films to make a living,
Yeah.
and it was still hobby painting. The big turning point of my whole artistic career was these costume paintings.
Yeah.
That really changed my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can see why. Would you like to tell us a little bit about this one?
This one is
Available still.
It's still available. Yes. It's from the Phantom of the Opera, which that was quite a job to get permission to paint these. It took well over a year of emailing and writing to people. It had to go through Andrew Lloyd Webber and his company to
Okay.
give permission. The designer is an amazing woman, but she sadly died. I had to track down the estate
Okay.
and get their permission. Cameron McIntosh's company Those guys had to give me the thumbs up for this as well. So once all those bridges were crossed, I was in London and I was at Her Majesty's Theatre, and the head of costumes said, "This is the master key to the dressing rooms." And I was so excited. I'm used to being in theatres, but to be given the master key for the dressing rooms, and then I was just running around with my cameras and the lights.
Oh yeah.
And I could arrange the costumes myself. It was awesome. So
very cool.
This is the Christine, the star, the female star of Phantom. And this is her dress from one of the scenes where it's an opera within an opera, Don Juan or Don Juan. And it's two dresses because they've got, it used to be called an understudy, but they're both stars, but one takes over if the other one's not feeling good or something. So we laid these two dresses out together and I took a few photos and I got this painting out of it. So that's why people might ask why two dresses, but it's not a scene from the opera. This is the Don Juan or Don Juan dress from that scene.
Very cool.
That's quite something, yeah.
So shifting gears back, when did you relocate to Canada and why?
I got to know Linda, my wife, in '98. And we were pen pals looking for travelling. I was assisting her and some other pen pals for travelling around Britain, and they used it as a stepping stone for Europe. And I was hoping to travel around the US and Canada. So we became good friends. And she was going to come to visit the UK first, but I had circumstances, I won't go into the details, a bit of a tragedy where I was sort of homeless for a while. And it was an escape for me. I said, "Can I come over to visit you in Montreal for a few weeks?" So that's where it started. We got romantically involved. We had so much in common. And we married in '99. And we were then discussing whether to settle in Canada or settle in the UK. But as she had two children who were not very strong in English, it would have been very disruptive for their school. And I know I could find work in theatre and films in Montreal, so I settled over here.
Oh, very cool. And how has Linda been supportive of your career as an artist?
Very supportive, yes. We sort of move and fluctuate. Sometimes she's the big breadwinner and she's totally supporting me financially for a while. And other times I've been making more money, and so
that's kind of how it goes in the marriage.
Yes, but she has been a teacher for most of our time together, so she's had a pretty good salary. She's retired now since a couple of years, so she's depending more on me. So luckily my career's taken off a bit, so we're struggling through COVID, but we're still surviving, which is the important thing.
Exactly. So prior to relocating, you were an associate member with the Guild of Motoring Artists. Can you tell us about that?
One of my favourite subjects is racing cars, driving. So I started to paint some racing cars, more Le Mans than Formula One. But I got friendly with one of the Le Mans drivers who lived locally to me. A town called St Albans, very close to me. And he sort of helped to get some of the teams to sign the drivers, including some of the Formula One guys. So I often thought this could be a big break for me, because there's a big market in racing car paintings. But
really? I did not know that.
Yeah, but the market is pretty saturated, and when I started to get into that market, I realised I don't want to compete. I met at that time Sterling Moss, who sadly died not long ago. He's one of the great legends in England, and still one of the greatest Formula One drivers. He was competing with Fangio, who was was the greatest racing driver ever. No, Schumacher broke his record.
Okay.
But I met Sterling Moss at his own house, and he loved some of the paintings I showed him of my racing cars. And I was discussing the limited edition prints, and he would sign them. But he was signing hundreds of other limited edition prints from other artists.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a financial thing for him as well, and in marketing.
Yeah.
I never pursued it any further, which is a shame in a way. I loved that subject. But I just decided then I would do one-offs of racing cars. I won't do prints and things. But then it moved on over time, especially when I came to Canada. I lost my contacts and moved on to other subjects.
So with your subject matter now, you had told me a story about Ernie, your driver. So,
yes.
Because your subject matter, I've seen the cars, I've seen the crushed up cars, and I've seen the costumes. And since I've been here, I've seen one of your abstracts too, which I love. And could you tell us about the progression and what role your driver played in that? Your subject matter progression.
That was an interesting story. When I started to do a few costume paintings, thinking it would just be a few. I don't think I'd sold any. I just started within that year. I had some at work in our own paint shop in the theatre, and Ernie is our driver who just fetches and delivers things mainly. He's a really nice guy, and he's a talented musician as well. I have to add, he's not just a driver. But he was delivering something and coming back to us, and he came to talk to me saying, I just passed our local salvage yard and they had a big stack of crushed cars all laying on top of each other, and he said, I couldn't help seeing your costume paintings, but instead of vertical they were horizontal, with the folds of fabric, the folds of metal. And he was so excited to tell me, so I had my camera there. It was in the morning when he told me, and at my lunch break I drove over there. It was only 3 or 4 minutes away, and I saw the stack of cars and I took loads of photos and I started to paint them straight away.
Okay.
So I thought I was as excited to paint those as I was my costumes, because I didn't think the costumes would really lead anywhere. And for me, they sort of went hand in hand. It was just folded materials, different textures. It could be silks or satins or velvets or metal, plastic, rust. It just felt the same.
Very cool.
So that's how that developed.
It's funny because as I was preparing for this interview, I realized I didn't know your progression. I knew the cars were early, but I didn't realize that the costumes came before the crushed up cars.
Just maybe a few months, but not a lot of difference between them.
Because initially, I found you on Artsy initially, and that's where I saw the crushed up cars, and I was like, oh, I love this, because those who know me know that that's what kind of art would draw me in.
Right.
And then I saw your costumes and I was really confused. I'm like,
they're very different subjects.
Is this the same artist? And I immediately fell in love with the costume paintings because they are just absolutely stellar. And it's a subject matter that I don't think many people have even contemplated doing. So.
I'm always surprised with the costumes, and gallery owners say the same thing. They don't see people painting the costumes, which is strange, and I guess I'm really lucky. And my career in theatres obviously helped me with that. That gave me the inspiration to paint them in the first place. Okay,
so what was it that drew you to costumes specifically?
Working at the Stratford Festival, which is where I was the head of scenic art for 8 seasons. So we have a very big paint shop there. I was amazed by the size of the paint shop. It was really exciting to lay down backdrops 100 feet or more on the floor to paint. But we're right next door to the costume warehouse, and they've got one of the largest costume warehouses in Canada. So they've got thousands and thousands of costumes on 2 floors. So I'm always going through there as well. And I don't call myself a photographer, but some people think I am a bit of a photographer. I've been taking so many photos of the costumes. So I was looking through the photos and thinking, wow, some of these pieces just blow me away. I have to paint some of these. So that's what started it. And I was just thinking, I'll paint some of them, 3 or 4 paintings maybe. I'd done 3 or 4 and I thought, well, I've only just scratched the surface, so I did a few more. And already I was evolving. I was trying to paint on a more abstract way initially, but they soon became realist. I always bounce back to realism. I guess I can't fight it anymore. But that's how it started. I wasn't planning on painting costumes for years and years. But that's how it's worked out.
It pays the bills.
I wasn't expecting such popularity.
I wish I would have jumped on one of your paintings earlier. But, someday
monthly
maybe.
installments. We'll find a way.
There you go. Yeah. So you've also done a lot of painting for major Hollywood films and Cirque du Soleil as well. What was that like?
It's set painting, much the same as theatre.
Yeah.
So different atmosphere. Sometimes the movies, especially the big movies, can be more factory oriented, production line. Not always. There's always some fun work.
Was that kind of influential in this, or not really?
Not really. I started in Montreal in films painting backdrops, which was closer to this kind of work, just that you're working with 100 feet or more. Once I did a 200-foot backdrop.
Okay. That's huge.
That's great. It was a forest scene, and it was 4 of us.
Okay.
So it was a team.
Okay, yeah.
But it was the most fun I had. That I was left alone for the best part of a day, just finalising the vegetation at the bottom.
Oh, cool.
And so that's fun, because you paint with brooms and mops.
Oh, okay.
Not little paintbrushes. You have to do something
big
and aggressive.
Like this. Yeah.
No. So it's very, very different.
Okay.
But you get to see. There's Leonardo DiCaprio in the distance making Kate Blanchett. But you don't really get to chat to these people. Occasionally you might, but it's different. And most of the time you're painting 3-dimensional objects, rocks or house walls, interiors.
Gotcha. So when we were prior to the pandemic, you and I were chatting on Facebook, and we were talking about possibly meeting you down at your show in San Francisco. And then the pandemic broke out and all hell hit, And I was wondering how the pandemic impacted your work and your ability to sell work. I know galleries were closing, and I know that, but what impacted?
It was a big impact on me. I'm glad we survived. I did sell a couple of paintings during the pandemic. One gallery sold a couple of pieces, but to local clients, the gallery wasn't physically open.
Yeah.
The San Francisco gallery closed down. All the galleries closed. So it hit me hard. I didn't sell enough to live on, but fortunately in Canada the government's subsidised self-employed people. It gave me enough to live on for the best part of a year to pay the bills and the mortgage. Yeah. So I survived on that, because by then my wife had retired as well. Okay. So she has a pension which wasn't great, but we couldn't live on her pension.
Some kind of income,
Yes. So fortunately I had a subsidy from the government which helped.
Yeah. The artists in where I live, the United States, is completely different, but in Washington State did get some unemployment benefits, but it took a long time for them, and watching the struggle of artists right then is kind of what gave...
It was terrible, And being in theatre as well, I saw it with theatre operators. Some theatres closed down, actors out of work, all the technicians out of work. Everything in the arts suffered tremendously. And I was more fortunate than many.
The pandemic is actually what gave birth to me trying to get artists some kind of visibility, because they are the hardest hit one economic.
Yeah. That's a great thing, if anything, to help.
So I know you're a fan of Brian May.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about him and the work that you've done on some of his?
I've got other musicians I'm a fan of as well, but Brian May, I love Queen. And I got to paint Freddie Mercury's shirt, which meant a great deal to me. I donated some of the money of that to the Freddie Mercury Trust as well, the Mercury Phoenix Trust it's called, which is an AIDS charity. I think I was honoured to be able to paint his shirts, so I thought it's the least I could do. And I know Zandra, and Zandra's pretty friendly with the group as well.
Okay, that makes sense.
So another thing I admire with Brian May is he's an astrophysicist. I'm passionate about science and astronomy and physics. So I thought, wow, he's a rock star, and he's a scientist as well. And I'm also passionate about the wildlife of the planets as well as the climate. But the wildlife of England particularly, he set up his own sanctuary called the Save Me Trust, named after one of the Queen songs that he wrote, because he wrote a lot of the Queen tracks himself. So I again thought maybe Zandra could help, because she's friends with these guys. But I thought, let's just first write to his animal trust and ask them. Maybe I would offer a painting. If Brian May lets me paint some of his show costumes, I'd donate a painting to his animal trust, perhaps a percentage of anything else sold. And they seemed quite interested. At first there was a little bit of a gap, but then they got back to me and said, this is really interesting. But this was just before COVID. So then COVID hit. I would have gone over that year, but of course no travelling. So we kept correspondence going, seeing how it could work, etc., etc. I never spoke directly with Brian May, but they were talking with Brian May directly about this, because obviously he has to give the permission. And they said he's quite excited by the prospect, especially when he saw my paintings. So I'm just thinking, wow, at least he's seen my work now, and he said yes, he would like me to paint some of his show costumes. So after more than 2 years, I finally got the opportunity last month in May to go back to England to visit the family, but also to call on Zandra Rhodes and visit Brian May, or visit his Save Me Trust. Unfortunately, I may have got the opportunity to meet him, but he was just starting his tour of Europe, so he wasn't there, he was rehearsing. But I met his team, and they had a fantastic arrangement of costumes. So I was there for the whole day, taking many hundreds of photos, different angles, and bit of movement in some of them. And he even had a couple of Freddie Mercury's original costumes, which he had there for me as well. So I was so excited. So I've got hundreds of photos, fantastic material.
Very cool.
And I've only come back a few weeks ago, so I haven't started yet. But I've been going through the photos and thinking, wow, I can do quite a few paintings from these pieces.
Sounds like that trip was very beneficial.
Oh, it was, yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. So I'm really excited just to make a start. But I'm committed to other paintings right now, so I have to finish a few pieces before I can really start on those. I can't wait. Yeah.
I love watching your work come out, and I can't wait to see the next. Those will be really cool. I love Queen, so.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. So, well, thank you for letting us use your studio today.
It's my pleasure.
And thanks for sitting down and chatting with us. I really appreciate this.
Thank you. And it's excited that you'd come all this way just to interview me. So
you bet.
Thank you.
You bet. You're one of my favorite artists. Not in the
I'm
collection yet, but you will be someday, I promise. So,
I hope so.
Yeah. And thanks for tuning in. Please,
thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. And please do subscribe on the YouTube channel. Take care.
Bye-bye.